help define our identities. So as you can see, we define ourselves as many different things, such as women, Black, African, researchers, social justice. However, some things that all three of us share is that we are Black women. This is important because of our identities influence who we are, our interests, and ultimately our research. Okay. So as we know, evaluation theory is considered a model, rules, prescriptions, frameworks that help to guide evaluation activities. When learning evaluation theory trees are often used to facilitate learning, of which white scholars' contributions are typically overemphasized with limited insights into the contributions of Black and Brown scholars. Hood and Hobson acknowledged the need to reconsider evaluation theory. They explained that while it's clear that African Americans were publishing work, not a lot is known about their contributions to evaluation. For our study, we wanted to explore how our identities impacted our learning of evaluation. Specifically, we were interested in understanding the impact of the evaluation theory trees on our learning. As there is limited evaluation education literature that investigates the learning experiences of students, we hope that our study helps provide student perspective on the teaching and learning of evaluation theory.
So based on our experiences in our classes with evaluation theory, we had several inquiries about the subject and that we wanted to further research. And so we chose to focus on our student experiences learning evaluation theory as Black women. And so specifically, we wanted to answer the following research questions. How do Black female evaluation students conceptualize evaluation theory? How does the use of evaluation theory trees impact the learning experiences of Black female graduate students? And then finally, what are the experiences of Black female graduate students in their learning of evaluation theory? So I'm sure that you all are familiar with this evaluation theory tree created by Alkin and Christie in 2004. But as a refresher, we've placed it on this slide, and they dispersed the theorists, and notice that I say theorists and not theories, into three branches: methods, use, and values. And so notice on this tree that there are only 5 women, and none of whom are Black. And then you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So we recognize that there are many evaluation theory trees that have been created since the 2004 Alkin and Christie tree. And so from the first tree that Alkin and Christie made, they made revisions in their 2012 book. And so there were expansions of those included on this tree, but still no Black women. And then finally, we present Merton and Wilson's 2019 version of the evaluation theory tree, which continues with the 3 branches, the methods, use, and values, but expands by adding a social justice branch. And so this tree does not directly illustrate the theorists that are to be included. Instead, they used an appendix to list these theorists out. And the social justice branch includes theorists of color and more women. But the 5 Black women included on this tree are all limited to the social justice branch of the evaluation theory tree. So we wanted to ground our research. So in this process, our overarching conceptual framework comes from postcolonial theory. So postcolonial theory highlights the anti-racist and anti-colonial political struggles through challenging traditional epistemologies and ontologies. And so, however, we also found value in the international lens of postcolonial theory, as we, as researchers, come from many different places. So as we did further research, we found that critical race theory brought an additional lens to the conversation, where we are not only challenging values, but how racial oppression is embedded in various systems. So in particular from CRT, the critical race theory, we focused on 2 of the tenets: intersectionality and whiteness as property. And so with intersectionality, the theoretical framing focused on the unique experiences of those who sit at the intersection of several different categories, whereas whiteness as property shows how properties, or in this case, curriculum as property, is protected. And then from there, we started thinking about learning theories, since our focus was on our learning experiences. And we found value in the hidden curriculum lens because of the nuance it adds to the conversation about implicit and unspoken values that are situated in teaching and learning. And then finally, we use social constructivism as it highlights the fact that some students learn through their experiences and connections, and those connections shape their understanding and meaning for constructs and information, as well as how knowledge rests in the diversity of opinions. Malitsitso, you're muted.
My bad. So before I go into talking about our methodology and what we did in our study, I thought it would be prudent to give a little bit of background about our study context. And so, like we said, we all come from the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and our program is unapologetically social justice oriented. And what this means is, firstly, that we, of the 5 required classes, evaluation theory classes that we have to take, one of them is culturally responsive approaches to evaluation. And in this course, we are exposed to the works of Black scholars, Brown scholars, Indigenous scholars, and their contributions to evaluation theory. We are also introduced to the other trees that Tyler shared with us. And in that class, we have, not only do we discuss their works, but we also go through the personal, sometimes awkward conversations that we need to go into about the history of race, the history of academia in America. What being in a social justice oriented program also means for us is that we took all of our evaluation theory classes from Black female professors. Also, as part of our program, which is another distinguishing feature of our program, is that almost all, if not all of the evaluation graduate students have assistantships where we work with our professors as PIs on evaluation projects. And so we not only learn about the theory of evaluation, but we also are at the same time applying it in our work. And most of the evaluation work is in the STEM evaluation field. So what did we do? So we embarked on a reflective self-study over the course of 2 semesters starting in the spring of 2022. We each kept reflective journals and responded to guided reflection prompts about the definition and examples of evaluation theory, when and how the contributions of Black scholars were discussed throughout our program. We reflected on our evaluation classes, on our experiences of learning evaluation theory, and particularly on the use of the evaluation theory trees shown previously. We also conducted recorded and guided reflective dialogue. For data analysis, we each coded the qualitative data generated inductively and deductively, guided by a theoretical framework. We met fortnightly to discuss codes, to resolve any conflicting codes, and to probe deeper on unclear and emergent issues. In these meetings, we also discussed the themes in our data, and then each researcher was assigned 2 themes to discuss alongside the evaluation theory literature. Next, we present our findings. So what did we actually find? So in relation to our first research question, which was how do we conceptualize evaluation theory? When we started this study, we were all more than 6 semesters into our graduate evaluation program. 2 of us had taken all the 5 required evaluation courses, and I, being on the measurement track, had taken 3, the required introductory class, applied evaluation, and culturally responsive approaches to evaluation. This mismatch in our evaluation theory classes, or in our experience with evaluation theory classes, worked to our advantage during the reflections, as we were able to challenge our understanding both as insiders and outsiders. As we mentioned before, in our program, we all work on evaluation projects, and we interface with the theory-praxis interaction. So the separation of evaluation theorists, and by implication theories, into methods, use, and values was one source of confusion around evaluation theory. In the conduct of an evaluation, methods, use, and values have to be attended to. And the emphasis of the trees that separates use theories from methods theories from values theories are subjective and ever-changing, which makes it difficult for us to recall and categorize the theories. In our reflections, we also noted that the context of evaluations call for flexibility, which does not lend itself well to prescriptive theories. We could all list a few evaluation theories, but when pressed, we could not clearly, concisely, and confidently articulate an evaluation theory. So for instance, as part of a semester-long role-playing assignment, we studied Daniel Staffelbeam's SIP model, but we couldn't articulate the actual theory or differentiate it from other closely related theories like utilization-focused evaluation theory. Given our backgrounds in science, education, and criminal justice, we struggled with this notion of a theory that is not prescriptive or that can't be concisely articulated. In our introductory class, we were warned that evaluation theory is not theory in the traditional sense of theories, but then why call it a theory? Which led us to another impasse. What is at one time called a theory is in the next moment referred to as an approach. We quickly learned that there's disagreement within the field on what distinguishes a theory from a framework from an approach. This also came up in our reflective dialogues while working on other projects where we interviewed evaluators, and even they used the terms theory, approach, model, framework interchangeably. This is a long-standing challenge in the field of evaluation. William Shadish, as far back as 1998, called for common meta-evaluation nomenclature. But also when we went back to look at some of the other theorists that were not covered in the classes, we found that some of them, for example, Thomas Cook, who appears on the methods branch of the evaluation theory trees, didn't actually contribute a theory, a model, or a framework. His contribution to evaluation practice and theory was the use or emphasis of quasi-experiments and evaluations. So a contribution also warranted one being called a theorist. In addition, some of the theorists on the tree did not set out to articulate theories and did not consider themselves theorists. For example, Jennifer Green and Brad Cousins. So one question that remained unanswered for us was, what makes one a theory? What criteria is used to determine when one's contributions coalesce to form a theory? Oops.
So another finding that we found was centered on the evaluation theory trees. Evaluation theory trees were a fundamental tool used to facilitate our understanding of evaluation theory throughout our introductory and even our advanced evaluation courses. And as mentioned previously, in our courses and in our program, we are exposed to several variations of the evaluation theory tree through our coursework. So we do have that exposure. In our study, we identified that in our courses, the tree was often used as a tool to organize the theories or theorists into different categories, such as use methods and values. We mentioned that the theory tree emphasizes the division of the branches, use methods and value. However, there is not explicit theories attached to these branches, and that emphasis on the division makes it kind of hard for us to see the overlap between these theories. Theorists, instead of theories were emphasized on the tree, caused further confusion for us, because although we were able to identify theorists, we have hard times recalling the specific theories, as Malitsitso mentioned previously. Additionally, by explicitly stating the names on the tree, the evaluation theory trees emphasize who and who is not considered a theorist. In turn, the evaluation theory trees made clear that the contribution of Black and Brown theorists were not seen as significant as their white peers, ultimately making it hard to see where our voices actually matter. So due to the limited representation available on the evaluation theory trees, reflected discussions in journals revealed that during our learning experience, we struggled to connect to evaluation theory. As I previously said, by not seeing theorists that look like us, we could not connect to evaluation theory and did not know where our voices belonged.
And to piggyback off of what Brianna is saying, this lack of representation on this particular theory tree exists in writings, while Black contributors are referred to as scholars and not theorists, which kind of takes us back to our conceptual framework with whiteness as property, where during these times it seemed as though the color of your skin determined how others determined the quality of your scholarly contributions, where Black and Brown contributions were often excluded from this foundational learning tool of evaluation theory. And so this is just a visual representation of the first iteration of the evaluation theory tree, which appears to be predominantly white male dominated, where there are only 5 women included on this tree and none of them were Black women. And so years later in 2019, Mertens and Wilson developed a new tree that included a social justice branch. So we've created a visual of just the social justice branch here. And so this branch intentionally included more theorists of color and more women, as I mentioned before, but only 5 Black women, and all 5 Black women included on this tree are all limited to just the social justice branch of evaluation, the evaluation theory tree. And you can see them highlighted. They will be highlighted in Black or bordered in Black on this particular demonstration. But there are no Black female contributors on the methods, use, or values branches of the tree. They're all found under the social justice branch under either feminism, African, or the critical race theory subsections. And so in the 1900s, Black women were not allowed to vote, let alone make contributions to scholarly work. And so we acknowledge this continuous perpetuation of excluding and erasing the contributions of Black theorists. And works of these evaluators were often seldom known by students. And even when they did, it was usually in our culturally responsive evaluation courses. So as Malitsitso already mentioned, our program is actually one of the few evaluation programs that offers and requires a culturally responsive evaluation course. And so in this course, students are exposed to evaluators of color. However, there's still this separation of mainstream theory that's taught in our foundational courses and theorists of color that is only taught in our culturally responsive course. And this creates this segregation and an implicit hierarchy. And so this separation exists throughout the field of evaluation, where you often see evaluators of color only contributing to the culturally responsive evaluation focus and less contributions to the other branches on the evaluation tree, and kind of exposes this unspoken value that's mentioned in hidden curriculum theory. And then finally, we had trouble learning this theory tree, or the several theory trees that we've presented today, because of our lack of connection to the content, right? And so we all 3 sit at the intersection of many different identities, but again, we all experience the double jeopardy of being Black women. And so these theorists that we see on these trees don't look like us. And so therefore, they don't share our same lived experiences, and even more so, it's difficult to apply these theories to populations that we evaluate, as they are often underrepresented.
I got it. So next we think about the next step. So what was the message that or rather, what are the next steps for our study? And so when we were thinking in relation to evaluation theory, what was clear is that the ambiguity around what is evaluation theory is not unique to us as Black women. There's general debates in the field. And so one of the suggestions that we have for teachers of evaluators, but also evaluators in general, is to be vulnerable about these challenges that exist in conceptualizing evaluation theory, so that students don't internalize the lack of clarity as a lack of their understanding. Another suggestion would be to use the terminology consistently. And so if we recognize people for contributing to the field of evaluation or the practice of evaluation, the use of theorists when it comes to some contributors and scholars when it comes to other contributors was injurious and affected our learning experiences. And so if we use that terminology consistently, if everybody's a scholar, if we're all scholars, or everybody's a theorist, if we're all theorists, or everyone is a contributor, if we're all contributors, that would help. Another thing that could be done is to induct students into this disharmony and help them navigate through the debates that exist within the field. And in particular relation to what an evaluation theory is, we think we should get better examples of evaluation theories and counter examples of evaluation theories.
To add, another next step we suggested is, when discussing evaluation theory, provide space for students to engage critically. Using the evaluation theory trees could be a tool to engage the students to engage more in critical conversations about the erasure and exclusion of Black and Brown theorists. Actually mentioning parts of the evaluation theory trees that may be problematic in having those conversations with students. Also provide space for students to research and learn more about the contributions of Black and Brown scholars in the field, as they're not often introduced in introductory courses. Providing that space could be beneficial to students.
And then finally, we suggest just going beyond checking the boxes, right? Be open and honest about this discourse around evaluation theory. As for those who are professors or teachers, maybe read and share contributions of theorists of color. So we've provided just a few examples to help you jumpstart your journey, like Hazel Simonette, the late Stafford Hood, Rodney Hobson, Jory Hall, Reed Jackson, and Aaron Brown, just to name a few. But even consider inviting these theorists to share their knowledge and unique experiences with your students, or if you are a student, suggest to your professors that they should include this in the curriculum. And so with these considerations in mind, this is just the beginning. None of us are perfect, but we have to acknowledge where and how we can do better, and that's where we start.
With that, we'd just like to say thank you for listening to our little talk, and we want to invite questions. I don't know if I should stop sharing or just have them. Can y'all see the chat? No?
I can see the chat.
Okay.
So if one goes in the chat, I can read it.
Are there any questions? Comments?
There was a suggestion to stop sharing the screen.
Oh, there we go. Oh, sorry. Hi, this is Lori in the room in the Eval Cafe. I don't think I have a question. I just want to get on your bandwagon of I don't think the theory tree is a useful tool. It does give a false sense that they are really in one of those branches when they really are so overlapping. And I also think when we talk about these things as distinguished from each other, I get the feeling that students leave some theory courses with the impression that they have to pick a theory. When my feeling is a lot of these ideas, whether they're called theories or whatever, or great hidden articles about how to do evaluation from way back when, they're all just ideas, people's ideas about how this work should be done, and we can draw from all of them, regardless of what they're called, or regardless of who put it on one branch versus the other. I just think a lot of these there's some value in a lot of them that we can draw from simultaneously. So I just not a fan of the theory tree, and I think people who work in evaluation are just inclined to want to organize and put things in categories, thinking it helps to understand them. But I just agree with you that it hasn't been a service. And that maybe, I think the tree has gotten a lot of attention, and maybe that in itself sort of reifies it in a way that's not helpful, positive and negative. I don't know, I'll stop, but just thank you for sharing your thoughts on this.
Thank you for that contribution. And I think what we're arguing is taking it further to say it's injurious, right? And so not only is it not helpful, but it actually harms. And if you think about some of the debates around taking down statues, it's a monument for a time where people like us were excluded, and it's still being used. Not only does it add to the confusion, but it actually harms.
I find that's very harsh to say. Do you all see Zach's question in the chat? If you want to read it and then respond.
So I can read the question. So do you have any ideas about how to coalesce around a shared meta-theoretical nomenclature as Sadish had suggested? I have ideas, but I'll let my peers go first.
I think you should start, Malitsitso.
Yeah, I think when you are in one culture, you sometimes tend to think that is the only way that things are. And so the way that you organize things is, you're not always in tune with your implicit biases or I guess implicit biases is the word. And so first of all, to acknowledge that there is a plethora of places where there should be contributions, realizing that you can't sit in your office with 2 or 3 of your peers that you get along with and come up with this nomenclature. It has to be broad-based, right? Like, so we need to, forums like AA are great, where you have like the different ethnicities, the different interests, the different orientations towards evaluation. And so it really would have to be broad-based. But my first suggestion would be to say, stop dividing people into theorists and scholars. For all scholars, let's all be scholars. And let's all have a way to list the contributions of scholars or evaluators, and let people make the decisions about what is more important, what is more used. And so dividing it into that theorist and scholar contribution approach does create a hierarchy, even if we want to say there's no hierarchy intended, it does create a hierarchy. And so the only way is to have a standard, just like let's all be theorists. If creating a theory is articulating a paragraph or 2 about your particular idea or approach to evaluation, let it be a theory. And if people, analyze these theories and say, well, these are all the same, then it can get condensed and into one theory that maybe would be the methods theory or the use theory.
And just to echo Malitsitso, I think the key is just being consistent, right? So being consistent across the board. I think the issue comes about when we have this ambiguity where some people use certain different things in different ways, right? And I think just the key across the board is for us to be consistent with how we use terminology, how we identify, like Malitsitso said, how we identify theorists versus scholars. And so I think just being intentional about being consistent. There was another question, I'll read it. Why do you think there is a divide between scholars and theorists, and how do you think where do you think it originates from? And I mean, I can jump on that just a little bit. I definitely think it's a historical or systematic issue, or systemic issue, excuse me. And so I think it's been embedded into the educational system for a really, really long time, where Black and Brown scholars, theorists, have been underrepresented, but also undervalued. And so oftentimes, that's kind of where that whiteness is property or hidden curriculum kind of comes into play. And so oftentimes the Black and Brown scholars Black and Brown theorists were viewed as scholars versus the white theorists were viewed as theorists. And so I think it's just a systemic issue that has been embedded into our educational system for years, to be honest.
Yeah, in a word, racism, I think, is where the separation originates. And we are at a point in time where we have to decide whether we are sticking by it or if we're redefining ourselves.
There's another question. What are your thoughts about the implications of your work for practicing evaluators?
I think practicing evaluators are doing well to work within this ambiguity. In our evaluation work, we do have like a paragraph where we say, this is the evaluation theories that we use. Oftentimes it's not one, it's several of them. And so I don't know if this is curtailing their work, right? Like the practice of evaluation necessarily.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say there's another question about, can you give a few examples of people who were labeled scholars versus theorists, and by whom?
I don't know if I can directly name from whom, but I will say the lack of inclusion on the evaluation theory trees exemplify that. So there were no Black theorists on the original evaluation theory tree. And so that exclusion and erasure is kind of an example of not being labeled as a theorist, where there were contributions, as we acknowledged before, but often those contributions weren't theories, right? They were just scholarly work. And so in that way, it might not have been directly named as a scholar or a theorist, but the lack of representation on these theory trees is the kind of issue that we're highlighting with acknowledging scholars versus theorists.
Another question is, any thoughts on African evaluation scholars? I'm not quite sure I get the question.
You can unmute yourself to ask the questions so that you make it clearer.
Because I hail from Southern Africa. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Hi. So just rephrasing the question. I'm Vuvo. I'm from Angola, but I'm a Christian. So I wanted to get insights on African evaluation scholars, not African Americans, but African, because I'm African myself. So I just want to know if you have any thoughts on scholars from Africa.
Thoughts about if they exist, thoughts about.
Would they be labeled as scholars or theorists? Do you think, do we have any African evaluation theorists, or they're just scholars as they're labeled?
So when we refer to theorists, we are looking at introductory evaluation classes that we went through and that we assume, you're going through as an evaluation graduate student, but also on the tree, right? And so there are no African evaluation theorists on the tree. So I don't know what the question is about my thought. I mean, I'm sure we have evaluation theorists that are African, but they're not, I was not introduced to them. I suspect you weren't introduced to them in your classes. And so should they exist? Yes, they should. I'm not sure I'm getting at your question.
There were two on the social justice branch of the Mertens and Wilson's 2019 theory tree, but again, the same issue exists, right? It's very limited, and it's only limited to the social justice branch of the tree, if that helps.
And the greater point I think also that we're making is that Black and Brown scholars contributed to methods, to use, to values, right? And so the segregation that we see where they are only acknowledged in relation to African evaluation also does create a hierarchy, right? Like, what makes white theorists theorists and African theorists? Like, we need to be careful about the demarcations that we create and how we label things. And this is what we found within our program, is that there's mainstream evaluation theory, and then there's culturally responsive evaluation theory. While it's an advantage that we see the works of these scholars, that we interact with what they do, their values align with our values, it does still make it seem as if they have this preserve where they can go and be great, whereas we have official evaluation theorists. We did have some reflection questions. I don't know if this is the time to share, Tyler.
Sure, yeah.
Oops. Sorry, I'm having some technical.
No worries. While you get that together, I'll just acknowledge one more comment. There was a comment saying, thank you for the presentation. I'm not sure, but I think the third edition of the evaluation roots has just been published by Sage. As you share your work, I'm wondering if you've had the opportunity to invite direct discussion with the editors or contributors about the tree, and we have not at the moment, but that was a great idea and a great suggestion, and we will take that into consideration as we move forward.
I have a comment. Do you want me to say the, do you want me to say the comment, or you want to go through these questions?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead with your comment.
So hi, I'm Val. I'm in the room here. You probably can't see me. I just wanted to say two things. So one, what I really like about your presentation, besides the slide design, which is pretty good, is also the role, like to me, you know, my takeaway is kind of the ways in which language is used to sort of reify or sort of underscore ideas of like white supremacy, of who gets what's valued within the way we think about different things and evaluation approaches and theory and historical sort of context. Have you thought at all, to be quite honest, I've never heard it phrased this way, but when you said being Black and being a woman, someone said this is double jeopardy. That sort of like sears through my mind. I haven't heard it put quite that way. And it also seems to solidify kind of like your major, one of your major points here, which is from a theory perspective, like I've heard critiques on the theory tree before and how representation is obviously problematic, but the ways in which representation happens through language and identification seems to be kind of like a unique take on it. Have you thought about like that angle in terms of like a publication or like further work on this?
It is in the works.
Yeah.
We are definitely, that was kind of where this originated from. And so it is definitely in the works. So hopefully you will see this in a journal very soon.
Yeah. And I hope Double Jeopardy makes it into a title because that is like so powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sadly powerful. Yeah.
So I think Malitsitso has pulled up the questions. We were hoping that we could all engage in these questions. So I'm not sure. Did you want to start at a particular point, Malitsitso? Okay. So we would love to hear about your experiences learning evaluation theory. I know that there are a lot of different people in this class, or I mean, not this class, but in this Zoom room. So we would love to hear, how did you guys learn evaluation theory? What were your experiences like? How are they similar or different? In the chat, or you can come off mute.
One just quick comment. I don't know if this is really directly addressing your questions that you have up right now, but it's sort of been going through my mind. The idea of this distinction between theory and scholar and why that's been used. And I think it really is reflective of this kind of long-standing bias in the world of academia, that somehow those who develop quote unquote theory or do these sort of big think academic type of exercises are on a higher level than those of us, especially really all of us in the evaluation field, who do practical, applied, and sort of field-oriented work are viewed. And as I'm sitting here, I'm realizing, gosh, I hadn't thought about it before, but I think that what you're sort of seeing is that bias being applied in a very exclusionary way, to sort of elevate those who think they've developed these grand ideas, and others whose ideas they don't think are so grand, they list as just being scholars or just being evaluators, because somehow, applied work or work that's outside sort of the ivory tower isn't regarded as highly.
Yeah, we had several conversations about that in our reflections. And I think one of it is also, a lot of the theorists on the tree, we're also practitioners, right? And so if we think about the example of Jennifer Green, like when she reflected, there was a special issue of evaluation and program planning, where some students had done a logic model of her values engaged and educative approach to evaluation. and they had sort of tried to break the theory down. And in her reflection, she, speaks about how she was not setting out to do a theory. She was just going about her work. She got a grant to codify her approach, but she got put on the tree. And so it's not just that they sit in the ivory tower. Some of them are actually doing practical work and thinking through their work. Like Brad Cousins also said the same thing. Like he was thinking through his work and using a framework to help himself think through it. And then it was picked up as a theory. And so, yes, a lot of it is that they're in the ivory tower, but they're also practicing evaluations.
Do you think that in those cases that you just mentioned, it's sort of like being labeled as a theorist was a way to somehow elevate them, even though maybe they traditionally or primarily identify as practitioners?
My views on this are very unpopular, but yes, definitely. I think if I was sitting with my friends and I could publish a book and call us theorists and make us famous, I would. And I would pick a few other people who, could distinguish their work from mine. I would do it. And it just, I think it just kept going. It's just like, okay, we keep adding to this tree, we're taking away, we're adding, and oh, there's some criticisms here, it's US based, let's add some international voices. And I can say this, my mom studied in Australia. And so even when we see the international perspectives, we see white Australians, right? And the international perspective, that whiteness as property still shows or comes through.
Can I ask a question around, this is Val again. Can I ask a question around, you said that culturally responsive evaluation is embedded, that's one of the courses that you have to take, that everyone's required to take. Has that always been the case in your program, or was that something that was recent? Like, can you speak more to that?
I can say that the evaluation concentration in our program is fairly new. So I would say probably like 2017, maybe a little bit before. And so that is when evaluation as a concentration in our ERM department became a thing. And so as I understand it from the very beginning, culturally responsive approaches to evaluation was always part of the program design.
Okay. Thank you.
So were there any reflections or thoughts on these questions, maybe about sharing your experience, if you feel comfortable enough to share your experience when learning evaluation theory, or if you feel like your identity, whether it would be gender identity or racial identity, how that might have impacted your ability to connect with evaluation theory? Any thoughts on that?
Hi, this is Zach Tilton. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, awesome. Thanks so much for your presentation and your work and research. I really appreciate this. Just your initial reflection comment. I learned eval theory as I still am a white male, cisgendered heterosexual male, and I learned from other white professors who happen to be men, and I think it's safe to say a predominantly white space, which was our program here at Western, and to give credence to a lot of the findings here, I didn't have speed bumps. I didn't have the because of that identity. I could latch on to and try to focus on that technical aspect or what's being said, and it just wasn't injurious for me because of my identity, because of the space I was in. And I think that's something I am reckoning with and have been trying to reckon with as I've been expanding my theoretical imagination and learning about the work of yourselves and others, the many theorists that you referenced, especially Vidya Shankar, who's been a good friend and comrade to collaborate with, and to, her work. I think that this is, I just wanted to say that I didn't have, because of my experience, because of who I am and my identity, I didn't have those people. And I think that's kind of the, at least some confirming evidence to give credence as to what y'all are saying and how you encountered it and how problematic it is for our field, for folks who don't look like me, to encounter this kind of structures. You connected it to white supremacist iconography or like statues, and we can do better. And I think this is great, and look forward to different metaphors and different ways of learning theory with a more representative community. Thank you for your work.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's an extremely valuable perspective. And I also wanted to read a comment that was in the chat. In my MPH program, we were required to take a course in evaluation. We did not learn as much about evaluation theory or theorists, but more so evaluation frameworks. However, CRE was not a part of my course or MPH training, which stood out to me since CRE would be an important approach for public health practitioners working across diverse communities. I was introduced to CRE through AEA, and I absolutely connect with this because I come from a background in criminal justice and psychology, and I was seeing the same gap, right? And so I feel like CRE absolutely should be embedded throughout that field as well, but it wasn't. And so that I wasn't introduced to CRE until I got into my program when it was required for our degree, but it kind of opened my eyes to how many different things CRE connected with. So we always approach CRE as if it's this separated thing, but it should be embedded in every field, really, honestly. And that's just my opinion. Was there another? Oh, Brianna responded to the comment.
Yes, I responded via chat. Ricky, I also do my background in the physical activity program. So I have been reviewing a lot of literature as far as the evaluation of those programs, and I see similar trends in the literature as far as maybe not being exposed to CRE and the limited application of culturally responsive methods to the evaluation of physical activity programs. But I think I cut somebody off. Somebody was about to start speaking. I'm sorry. I think in the room.
Sorry about that. That was just me. It's Val again. Sorry, this is like my third time speaking, so you're not cutting me off. I was just gonna say, to some of these, to my own experience. So I started out in evaluation as a completely accidental evaluator. It became one of my jobs at a nonprofit, and I came from a formal research background and had worked on lots of research projects. And so by the time that I got to my first evaluation class, I remember getting the tree, the book tree, the Alkin and whatever. And I didn't, my background's sociology, political science, women's studies, and I didn't understand the tree at all. It just didn't resonate with me as a useful heuristic. And also that sort of talking around theory, well, as a statistics person, a former statistics person, and someone who was very much in social theory in my master's program, I couldn't connect the evaluation tree with what I had recently learned to understand how I was supposed to apply it. And then the subsequent class was okay, now we're going to do evaluation plans. And I was well, how does this connect to the book that we had to read all last semester? So yeah, it just seemed like this is this thing that we have to read. Yeah, it was just confusing all around. I don't think I really got it.
Thank you for sharing, Val. Don't apologize for speaking, because at this point we're besties now. But no, we really appreciate you sharing your experience, because it goes to show that it's not just, your gender identity or your racial identity that impacts, learning, but there is some ambiguity in the evaluation theory, just learning of evaluation theory in general. And so we greatly appreciate you sharing your perspective on that. Any other thoughts? I know we're kind of wrapping up. I know we have a few minutes. I know there was a last comment in the chat. I'm not in the evaluation program, but I'm interested in evaluation. I took one eval class and briefly learned about evaluation theories. The course mainly focused on program evaluation and how to conduct an evaluation. I agree that some introductory evaluation classes are confusing. Absolutely. It seems like there's a consensus here.
Well, hi, it's Lori again in the room, and I just want to make sure our mics is on so we can clap in the room for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks for joining us. So we're sending out the link for the next eval cafe. So take time to register, and we thank you so much for joining us today, and we wish you all the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Okay.
I'll wait till that.
Can you also ask them for?
So, Anax is unmuted.
I know, but like sometimes you're not. Oh, can you guys hear me?